Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Mulligan. I'm the Shorebird Data Quality Manager for the Shorebird program at the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. First off, thank you to each surveyor here for your interest in monitoring shorebirds and seabirds. Florida's extensive shorebird monitoring program is only possible because of the dedication of people like you. Your monitoring efforts help us locate nests and chicks so we can protect them, identify threats so that we can manage them, and detect trends in populations so that we can better track focal species. Once again, on behalf of all shorebirds and seabirds that nest in Florida, thank you for your participation. We have two main goals to cover today. Learn how to monitor shorebirds and seabirds using our standardized protocol, the breeding bird protocol for Florida's shorebirds and seabirds, which I'll refer to as the BBP or the protocol during this presentation, and learn how to enter monitoring data into the Florida Shorebird database, which I'll refer to as the FSD or the database. The FSD is our online database where you will be entering the data you collect. It is the repository that tracks nesting shorebird and seabird data in Florida. The breeding bird protocol provides standardized methods for data collection. When data is collected the same way across the whole state, we can track population status and trends, and we can use the data to inform management decisions locally and statewide. A link to the protocol was emailed to you prior to this webinar and can also be found on the FSD website under the Resources tab. Please feel free to have a copy open as we continue. So, what are we monitoring? What data are we collecting? The BBP provides instruction on how to monitor shorebird and seabird breeding populations. These are counts of adult breeding birds. Nesting, chick rearing, and staging locations. Nesting outcomes, so whether or not a nest was successful. And any threats or disturbances that may be present. This could be predation, anthropogenic causes, or anything else that threatens successful nesting. Seabirds and shorebirds are two biologically distinct groups of beach nesting birds found along our coast and in some inland areas. For our purposes, the most important difference between seabirds and shorebirds are their nesting strategies. Seabirds nest together in groups called colonies, banking on safety in numbers. A single colony will typically be comprised of multiple breeding pairs and contain one or more seabird species nesting together. The size of the colony will vary depending on species, location, and habitat composition. Because they nest in groups, colonies tend to be obvious. The adults are loud and will actively defend their colony by taking turns dive bombing intruders. Their chicks tend to remain within or close to the colony as they are dependent on their parents to feed them. Even after becoming flight capable, seabird young tend to hang out near colonies until the nesting season ends and adults disperse. In contrast, shorebirds are solitary nesters. A pair of shorebirds will typically choose to nest away from other shorebirds and rely on camouflage for safety. Due to their secretive nesting behavior, shorebird nests are more difficult to locate. Often, the best way to locate a cryptic shorebird nest is to patiently observe the adult's behavior, which can take a bit of practice. Shorebird chicks are precocial. They are highly mobile and are out of the nest within hours of hatching and may move miles away from their natal nest. There are, of course, exceptions. Some shorebirds choose to nest in seabird colonies, and sometimes seabirds will nest individually. While seabirds and shorebirds are two distinct groups of birds, we sometimes refer to both groups collectively as shorebirds. For example, in the name of our database, the Florida Shorebird Database. It is important to note that there are 20 species of seabirds and shorebirds that nest throughout Florida, but not all of these species nest statewide, so it is unlikely that you will observe all of these birds nesting where you are surveying. Please try to focus your efforts on monitoring the bolded species. These are the species you are most likely to see if you conduct coastal route surveys, and they are designated as state threatened. The black skimmer, Caspian tern, gull-billed tern, laughing gull, least tern, roseate tern, royal tern, sandwich tern, American oyster catcher, snowy plover, and Wilson's plover. Shorebird breeding season typically starts in March and goes through the end of August. Depending on the species, the weather, and where you survey in the state, you may see birds on nests as early as February or tending to unfledged young as late as October. The breeding bird protocol designates 6 count windows, which are week-long survey windows from March to August. At a minimum, we ask Florida Shorebird Alliance partners to commit to surveying each of these count windows. Surveying during these monthly count windows provide us with a statewide snapshot of breeding activity. We recommend surveying weekly once nests are observed where you are surveying. Weekly surveys provide a better estimate of peak counts and increases our understanding of nest outcomes and causes of nest failure. For example, let's say I find an active nest during the May count window. Next time I survey during the June count window, and I find that the nest is no longer present. There may not be enough evidence to determine what happened to the nest. Perhaps it hatched and the adults moved the chicks out of the area, or maybe it was predated and the adults abandoned the area. If I check that nest weekly, I have a better chance of determining the outcome of the nest because of the signs of what happened could still be present, such as tracks, broken eggshells, etc. There are a handful of key concepts you'll need to understand before you start surveying. These are defined in the breeding bird protocol on pages 3 and 4. We will discuss each concept first, then put them together for what a theoretical survey trip might look like. We will go into more detail about what data is collected for each concept when discussing data sheets. A route is the path that you survey and search for breeding birds. Routes have designated start and end points and should be short enough to survey in a single outing. In the database, routes are represented as a line accompanied by a purple diamond as pictured on the map. Most routes will be land-based, typically covering beaches, but some breeding habitat can only be surveyed by boat, so you will see some water-based routes. There are likely already designated routes in your area. Using the same route every time you survey an area helps us better understand how the birds are using habitat and how that use changes during the breeding season and over the years. Remember to connect with your local partnership to find out which routes are available to survey. When you survey a route, you are conducting a route survey. A route survey is each individual time that you visit a route to look for breeding birds, and ideally covers the entire route from the start to end point. Route surveys should occur at least monthly during each count window, and then weekly if possible once nests are observed on the route. A site is the physical location where the birds are nesting. Remember that seabirds and shorebirds have different nesting strategies. This is reflected in how we collect data. Shorebirds typically nest individually, so each shorebird nest is considered a site. Seabirds typically nest together in colonies, so each individual colony is considered a site. Like routes, sites are geographic locations. In our database, solitary shorebird nest sites are represented by a big yellow diamond, and the seabird colonies are represented by a blue diamond. Because seabird colonies cover an area, as opposed to a single point like a solitary nest, the database also uses green polygons to represent the colony footprint as pictured on the map. A site visit is when you go check on a site, either a colony or a solitary nest. Site visits to a site should occur on every route survey from the time a nest site is discovered until the birds are no longer actively using that nest or colony. For solitary nests, this means that the breeding pairs are no longer tending to the nest. For colonies, this means that all chicks and breeding adults have left the colony. A roving chick observation is the physical location where shorebird chicks are observed outside of the nest. A staging young observation is the physical location where flight-capable seabird chicks are observed away from the colony. Seabird young are dependent on their parents for food even after they fledge. They rarely stray from the colony before fledging. Like routes and sites, these observations are geographical locations, but unlike routes and sites, these locations are transient, representing where chicks were observed at the time of the survey. So they are not considered sites and thus do not have site visits. In the database, both roving chick and staging young observations are represented as yellow circles as pictured on the map. We did skip forward a bit in the protocol. Roving chick and staging young are mentioned throughout the protocol. That is why I'm bringing it up now, but they are specifically addressed on page 14 and 15 in the protocol. Let's pull all these concepts together and walk through what a potential route survey might look like. First, choose a route that you would like to survey or that meets the needs of your local partnership. Next, visit the route during the monthly count window, or more frequently if you're able, especially if there's nesting. Next, conduct a route survey. Start at the beginning of the route, the start point. As you survey the route, you see and hear a group of black skimmers and least terns on the beach. You stop to observe them, and you see that both species are nesting together. This is a mixed species colony site. You will collect data for that site since it is the first time that you documented the colony, and you will also conduct a site visit. We will cover what data you are collecting when we go over the data sheets. If you had documented this colony on a previous route survey, you would only need to conduct a site visit. After collecting the appropriate data, you continue to survey the route. You observe a Wilson's plover incubating eggs. This is a solitary site. You collect data for this site and then conduct a site visit. A little further down the route, you observe a young killdeer with its parents foraging on the shoreline. This is a roving chick observation. You collect data for this observation and then you continue surveying. When nearing the end point of the route, you observe a group of black skimmer flight-capable young being fed by their parents. They are well away from the colony site, so you report this as a staging young observation. You collect data for this observation and then continue to the route endpoint. Sometimes you may conduct a route survey and not see any sites, roving chicks, or staging young. You may not see any breeding adults or chicks at all. This data is still important to collect and sometimes is referred to as zero data. It's important data too because it tells us where the birds are not breeding. Let's go over some basic monitoring etiquette. There are a few things to keep in mind while surveying to keep you and the birds safe. Avoid disturbing the birds as much as possible. If they change their behavior in response to you, for example, broken wing, alarm calling, flushing, dive bombing, etc., please back up. You're too close to their nests and chicks. You want to give the birds as much space as they need to properly care for their nests and chicks. Be aware of potential predators. Flushing birds from their nests or chicks when predators are nearby may result in predation. Do not enter posted areas. These are any areas that have keep out or do not enter signs or symbolic fencing. You need a permit from FWC to access these areas. If you see a nest or colony that is not posted, it is likely that the land manager doesn't know about it. Alert landowners and managers about any new sites that you find so they can post the area to keep people from disturbing the birds. Not sure who the land manager or landowner is? Contact FWC staff. Your regional shorebird biologist is a great resource, and you can find their contact information on the FSD website under the Help tab. We can break down monitoring ground nesting shorebirds and seabirds into 3 basic steps. 1. Conduct a route survey. 2. Document any nests, colonies, and chicks or young observed on a route. And 3. Enter all of this data into our online database at flshorebirddatabase.org. To aid in data collection, we provide 4 data sheets which we are going to go over today. And these data sheets are designed to collect data based on the standardized methods outlined in the breeding bird protocol. They can be found on the FSD's website under the Resources tab. The route form will be filled out under Step 1. The other 3 forms are all used in Step 2. Many route surveys are conducted in partnership with local, state, or federal agencies who manage the land being surveyed, and they may request that you use their data sheets or collect additional information. But let's start with Step 1. Conduct a route survey. Every time you conduct a route survey, you will complete a route form, even if you are not able to finish surveying the entire route or you didn't see any breeding birds, chicks, or young. When filling out a route form, you will record the following: the name of the route, the names of the observers that participated in the route survey. These should be the people who helped collect data, not just people tagging along for fun. The date and the start and end times of the survey. Remember to use local time. How you surveyed the route, as in what mode of transportation did you use to conduct your survey? Did you walk, use an ATV, a boat? You do not need to record how you accessed the route, just the mode you used to conduct the survey. How much of the route did you survey? Did you do the entire route, or did you conduct a partial route survey, meaning you were only able to survey a section of the route? You may not be able to survey the route entirely every time. Storms, time restraints, tides, etc. may cause you to cut a survey short. Additional breeding adults on the route. More on these counts later. And comments. You can use this space to document any additional information, like further explain unusual observations, non-breeding birds, or banded birds. To help keep you organized, there is also an optional site checklist. You can use this space to keep track of what known sites are on your route, and if you visited them during that route survey. We ask you to collect additional breeding adult counts for 3 focal shorebird species: the American oyster catcher, pictured on the top, the snowy plover in the middle, and the Wilson's plover on the bottom. The big picture is we want to know how many adults for these 3 species are breeding on each route that you survey. And we get that count by knowing the number of 1, adults at nests, 2, adults with chicks, and 3, any additional adults that are breeding on the route. Adults at nests and adults with chicks are counted on other data sheets, which we will go over next. On the route form, you will only be documenting counts of additional breeding adults on a route. Additional breeding adults, which are defined in the breeding bird protocol on page 7, are adult birds breeding on a route that were not counted at a nest site or with chicks. This includes birds that are likely to have a nest this season, like territorial pairs or birds exhibiting other breeding behaviors. Birds that currently have nests or chicks on your route but were not observed with them. And birds that had a nest or chicks already this season, but it failed. So in between nesting attempts. Not all adult shorebirds you observe on your route will be counted as additional breeding adults. The additional breeding adult count is not a count of every bird you see on your route, just those who are actually breeding on a route, but were not observed with their nest or with their chicks. Birds that are excluded from this count are birds observed at nests or with chicks. These do not get counted as additional breeding adults as they are counted as part of the solitary nest site or roving chick observation. Breeding adults on other routes or rooftops are also not counted as additional adults. Sometimes breeding birds that are nesting but not on the route you are surveying will visit your route. They do not get counted as additional breeding adults on your route. They will get counted on their own route or rooftop survey. These will likely be single birds or pairs loafing or foraging along a route but not displaying nesting behavior nor have a nest. Non-breeding age birds are also not counted as additional adults. These include birds that are too young to breed and breeding age adults that are not breeding during this season. These birds may be alone or in small flocks and are not defending territories or exhibiting other nesting behaviors. Birds that are known or are likely non-breeders should not be counted as additional breeding adults on your route because they are not actively breeding during the season. Note that for some species, plumage is not a reliable indicator that a bird is breeding. For example, American oystercatchers do not breed until they are 3 to 5 years old, but can have full adult plumage well before then. Behavior is the best indicator that a bird is breeding. Sometimes you'll find it challenging to determine if a bird should be counted as an additional breeding adult on your route. If you're unsure, ask yourself a few questions about the birds. Are they either by themselves or paired off with a potential mate? Have you been regularly seeing them in the same area on your route? Are they present on a route during peak nesting season? Are they exhibiting breeding behaviors, like actively defending a territory, but no nest has been found yet? If you can answer yes to these questions, then these birds are likely nesting on your route and can be counted as additional breeding adults. Learning to identify additional breeding adults on your route takes time and patience. If you're brand new to surveying, it is helpful to shadow a more experienced shorebird monitor. Remember to reach out to your local partnership for guidance and extra resources. Let's continue using our example route survey from earlier. This route is called Amelia Island. It was surveyed by I'm a Birder and Elizabeth Darcy on March 18th during the first monthly count window from 9 to 11 a.m. These observers surveyed the route by walking and were able to complete an entire route survey. They used tallies to keep track of additional breeding adults on their route for a total of 3 oystercatchers, 0 snowy plovers, and 8 Wilson's plovers. They also saw a small group of oystercatchers roosting together. They determined that these birds were non-breeders, so they did not include them as additional adults, and instead recorded them in the route comments section. Amelia Island is on the Atlantic coast where snowy plovers do not breed, so they will always report 0 breeding adults for snowy plovers. If you are actively looking for additional breeding adults during your route survey, but do not see any, please record 0. Step 2 is to document any adults nesting, chicks, or young observed on the route using the Shorebird nest form, the Seabird colony form, and the Roving chick/staging young form. Let's start with shorebirds on page 7 and 8 in the protocol. Shorebirds nest individually, so each shorebird nest is a site and gets its own shorebird nest form, pictured here. You will use the same datasheet to document a new site and to document a site visit. Each time you find a new shorebird nest site, you will need to give it a unique name, report if it's a renest when a breeding pair has previously attempted to nest during the current breeding season, then initiates another nest. That nest is considered a renest. The first nest of a breeding pair is often referred to as the original nest. And take a GPS point. A nearby point is okay. It's important to avoid flushing birds from the nest. If you're worried about finding the nest site again, use the comment section to note some landmarks. Here's an example of a shorebird nest form documenting a newly found nest. The nest was given a unique name. I recommend using a naming convention that conveys key information about the site. For instance, start with location, AI for Amelia Island, the name of the route, and then the species code, Whipple for Wilson's plover, then the nest number. In this example, the new nest is a renest, so that is indicated in the name as well. The original nest for this pair was AIWIPL01, so the pair's first renest is named AIWIPL01_R1, R1 for renest 1. Because this is a renest, check off yes. Report the name of the original nest, record the GPS coordinates, and note if the site is posted. Remember to always alert land managers about new sites, especially if they are not in posted areas. After documenting the new nest site, you will need to complete a site visit. You will do a site visit for any shorebird nest sites seen during a route survey. Each time you conduct a site visit, you will record the status of the nest and the final outcome if the nest is complete, the species, the nesting behavior exhibited by the adults, if one or both of the adults are present, as well as the egg and nestling counts, and any relevant comments, like if the adults are banded. You can also report potential threats and disturbances in the optional information section. The shorebird nest form has three status categories: probable nesting, active, and no longer active. Probable nesting is for cases where you strongly suspect that there is a nest nearby, but you don't want to disturb the birds to investigate. If you survey weekly or daily and you think you might eventually spot the nest, I'd advise waiting until you see the nest to add this site to the database. But if you only go out once a month or every couple of weeks, or if the habitat makes it difficult to detect a nest, add it as a probable nest. Active means you saw the nest with viable eggs or nestlings, saw an adult bird incubating or brooding, or the bird performed displays to draw you away from the area. Broken wing display is common. No longer active is when the nest has ended and no longer tended to by the adults. No viable eggs or chicks are in the nest cup. This could be because the eggs have hatched and the chicks have left the nest was abandoned or destroyed, or the nest is gone and you're not sure what happened. Detecting solitary shorebird nests is often best done by first watching a shorebird's behavior. If you see a bird incubating, brooding nestlings, or giving the broken wing display, it means a nest is present. Some birds are more cryptic. They may slink away from the nest to lure you away from the area. All three of these behaviors can be reported as an active nest site. Pictured on top is an example of an American oyster catcher incubating eggs. In the middle, it's a snowy plover brooding nestlings on a nest. And at the bottom, a Wilson's plover performing broken wing display. Also of note, don't confuse a bird brooding nestlings with a bird brooding roving chicks. When a bird is brooding nestlings, they are at the nest site and it is likely that one or more of the eggs is still hatching. When the adult is brooding a roving chick, they are not at a nest site and they are documented using the roving chick staging young form. In our example shorebird nest form, a breeding pair of Wilson's plovers were observed acting like they had a nest, but the nest itself was not visually confirmed. The adults were slinking down by the beach trying to draw the attention away from the area where AIWIPL01R1 was found. This behavior is a good indicator that there is a nest nearby. Thus, the nest status should be reported as probable nesting on the data sheet. In the counts section, record the number and species, 2 Whipple adults. The egg and nestling counts are left blank as no nest was observed. Another example where you would report the nest status as probable nesting is if the pair is in a large closed area, typically a posted colony, where you're unable to get a good enough view to see a nest, but parental behavior strongly suggests a nest is present. Let's say the same nest is checked a week later. This time the same pair is seen in the same area, and one of the adults is in incubating posture. After a few minutes, the incubating adult gets up and reveals a nest with 3 eggs and 0 nestlings. Record the nest status as active, the nesting behavior as incubating, and the counts as 3 eggs, 0 nestlings, and 2 adults. If the nest is active but you're unsure if eggs or nestlings are present in the nest cup, you can report unknown for both. If you know eggs or nestlings are in the nest cup but did not count them, you can report them as present. We want you to give us as much information as you can gather from a distance that is safe for the birds. It is not okay to collect data if collecting it disturbs the birds. Let's say the same nest is checked a third time a few days later. This time no adults are in the area and there are no eggs in the nest. It's too soon for the eggs to have hatched, and there are ghost crab tracks in and around the nest and a burrow next to the nest. Record the nest status as no longer active and the final outcome as no eggs hatched, and document the evidence that crabs likely predated the nest. Once a nest is given a final outcome, you no longer need to visit a site when conducting future route surveys. If the adults from this nest try to nest again, that will be considered a new nest site. Here's an example of how to report a nestling on the Shorebird nest form. In this example, one egg and one nestling were observed in the nest with both adults nearby. The site status is marked as active, and the count table includes one nestling found in the nest with one egg. This is not common, but it's possible. If you find a shorebird roving chick, you will report it using the roving chick staging young form. You will need to document the location of the chick or chicks, the habitat they are using, the species, the number of adults and chicks, the natal nest if it is known, and any relevant comments. Are any of the birds banded? Any interesting interactions? You can also use the bottom section to document any potential threats or disturbances. Both roving chicks and staging young are reported by chick age classes: downy, feathered, and flight capable. See page 14 in the protocol. Downy chicks include chicks from newly hatched up to 1.5 or 2 weeks old, depending on the species and local variability. They are covered in downy feathers and look very fuzzy. They're small and stay close to their parents. In the case of shorebird chicks, when recently hatched chicks are found in the nest bowl, they are recorded as nestlings. As soon as the downy chick leaves the nest bowl, they are reported as a roving downy chick. Feathered chicks are about 1.5 to 3 weeks old and have pin feathers. Feathered chicks may have some down, but overall have more feathers than down. They're bigger and more mobile. These chicks will have a scruffy appearance and are noticeably smaller than the adults. Flight-capable chicks are capable of flight. About 3 to 4 weeks after hatching, they have learned to fly and can fly in short bursts. As soon as they're able to do this, we count them as flight capable. These chicks are almost always the same size as the adult. Here's an example of a roving chick staging young form. There were 3 downy Wilson's plover chicks observed foraging on the beach with one adult. The observers record the species as Whipple, 3 downy chicks, 0 feathered, and flight capable, 1 adult, and the beach as habitat type. In this case, the natal nest for these chicks is known, AIWIPL01. A natal nest is the nest from which the chicks hatched. You can only assign natal nests for shorebirds. We ask that you give us the natal nest name wherever possible, and we encourage you to assign a natal nest if you know the happenings of your route and that you are relatively confident. This route is surveyed weekly, and the observers know that even though there are multiple Wilson's plover nests in the area, AIWIPL01 is the only one that was ever near its hatch date. If you are able, please also fill out the optional information section at the bottom of the form. All the site forms have the optional information section. Filling out this section can help guide management and document pressures the birds are experiencing. In this example, there were dogs on the beach and wet rack present. We will come back to this form to talk about staging young, but first let's discuss colonies. You will fill out the Seabird colony form anytime you survey a colony. Seabirds nest collectively in colonies that can be comprised of 1 or more species nesting together. Pages 9 and 10 in the protocol. You will use the same data sheet to document a new colony site and a site colony visit. When you observe a new colony, you will need to give the colony a unique name and collect location data. Colonies cover an area, so you will need to collect at least 3 GPS coordinates. Colonies may shift or grow or shrink in size over the breeding season. If this happens, you can collect new GPS coordinates to reflect the changes. In this example, a new mixed species colony was found on a route survey for Amelia Island. The colony needs a unique name. I recommended naming the colony like solitary sites, using a naming convention that conveys key information about the site. For example, start with the location, AI for Amelia Island, the name of the route, then the species code. Since it's a mixed species colony, I used mixed colony instead, and then the colony number. This is the first colony found on this route, so the colony is given the name AI Mixed Colony 01. The colony may grow or shift over time, so even though you will record 3 GPS points for the location of the colony when you first discover it, you may need to update these coordinates at a later time. Just like solitary nests, it is important to alert landowners and managers to new colonies, especially if they are not yet posted. After documenting a new colony site, you will need to complete a site visit. You will do a site visit for any seabird colony sites seen during a route survey. When conducting a site visit to a colony, you will need to record the status of the colony. If the colony is no longer active, you will also need to report a final outcome. Counts of nests, chicks, and adults. Whether or not there was a major loss. If the site is posted, and comments. You can use this space to document any additional information such as banded birds in the colony or to describe a disturbance event. There is also a section for reporting optional information about disturbances. Did something cause the birds to flush? And threats to the colony. Animal or people tracks seen nearby. Dogs on the beach. This section is optional. The seabird colony form has two categories, active and no longer active, which are similar to nest status for solitary nests. Active means you saw at least one bird in the colony is in incubating or brooding posture, or at least one chick is present in the colony. No longer active is when the colony has ended and there are no longer any nests or chicks left in the colony. Report a colony's final outcome as successful. At least one flight-capable chick was produced from the colony, or if the colony was abandoned or destroyed before producing any flight-capable young, or if the colony is gone and you're not sure what happened. When conducting a seabird colony survey, you will be counting all nests, chicks, and adults in or very near the colony. As mentioned earlier, you are unlikely to be able to see nests with eggs in a colony. So nests are counted by counting the number of adults in incubating posture. It is important while counting colonies that you stay back a safe distance from the birds. You should be far enough away from the colony that the birds are not flushing or moving in response to your presence. When counting seabirds, we ask that you report the count type because it lets us know how you counted the birds, which gives us a sense of the accuracy for those numbers. There are 4 different count types for colonies: direct, extrapolated, present, absent, and did not check. Count types are defined on pages 11 through 13 in the breeding bird protocol. Different survey conditions will dictate what count type you use. Whenever possible, you should conduct a direct count. Use this count type when you're able to see and count everything in a colony, all nests, chicks, and adults. And the number you're reporting is the true actual number. You may need to move around to count the entire colony. Start with nests and count all nests, incubating adults, at least twice and report the average of your counts as the direct count of nests. For larger colonies, it is good to have help. If you are counting a colony with other surveyors, each surveyor can count once and then report the average of everyone's count as the direct count. Repeat for chicks and total adults. Do not try to conduct multiple counts at the same time. In this example, I visited a colony and I was able to see and count the entire colony. On my first count of nests, I counted 50, and on my second, 52. I report the average of these counts, 51 nests, as my direct count of nests for this colony. If you are unable to conduct a direct count, try to conduct an extrapolated count. This is a less accurate count, but it still provides good information on the size of the colony. Extrapolated counts are used when your view of a colony is significantly obstructed. This may be due to vegetation or topography like dunes. No matter where you move, you cannot see the whole colony. Or if the colony is very large and you do not have time to conduct a direct count for the entire colony. An extrapolated count is not a guess. It is a calculation based on the proportion of the colony where you can conduct a direct count. Let's walk through an example. The example colony pictured here has a large dune running through it. It is not feasible to conduct a direct count because no vantage point or combination of vantage points allow you to view and count the entire colony. Instead, you conduct an extrapolated count using the calculation protocol found in the breeding bird protocol on page 12. Step 1. Position yourself where you can see as much of the colony as possible. Step 2. You delineate the viewable portion of the colony as your count area. In this example, you can see the portion of the colony shaded in light green. You cannot see the portion of the colony shaded in dark green. That's blocked by the dune. You conduct a direct count of the nest in this viewable portion of the colony. Remember, a direct count is the average of 2 counts. In this example, your direct count of nests in the viewable portion is 450. Step 3. You determine approximately what percent of the entire colony your direct count area covers. Here, you approximate that you counted 75% of the entire colony. Step 4. Now, you divide your direct count by the proportion of the colony counted to get your extrapolated count. In this example, you divide 450 by 0.75 for a total of 600 nests. For decimal values, round to the nearest whole number. Repeat for chicks by age classes and adults. If you don't have time for a direct or extrapolated count, you can report present or absent. These count types at least let us know whether a colony is active in the area. It has limited utility for us, but it at least lets us know, and other monitors know, that nests may have been present for different species. If you use present in lieu of a count, please know that present equals 1. When we do any analysis, we are only able to say with any certainty that there was at least 1. If you are time limited, please consider doing an extrapolated count, especially when counting adults. Marking absent indicates that you were able to verify that there were 0 nests or chicks in the colony. It is the same as reporting a direct count of 0. If you can't confirm presence-absence, for example, after a storm and you suspect chicks may be present but they are hiding, report did not check. Let's go back to fill out the Seabird colony form from the newly found colony AI Mixed Colony 01. The site visit portion of the form looks and is similar to what we filled out on the Shorebird nest form. This colony is mixed and has black skimmers and least terns nesting in it. I observe adults from both species in the incubating posture, so I report the colony status as active. I report no for a major loss since this is the first time I have observed this colony. Major loss is used to report when 25% or more of the colony is lost. Either a large number of chicks disappeared or nests failed between visits. A common cause for major loss is weather events that cause overwash or predation. I can see the entire colony. Nothing obstructs my view, so I use a direct count to document nests, chicks, and adults. I report a direct count of 32 adults in the incubating posture for black skimmers. There are no chicks yet, so I report a direct count of 0 for all age classes. When I count adults, I count the total adults in the colony, including adults in the incubating posture. Because of this, your adult count should almost always be greater than your nest count. I repeat this for least terns and get a direct count of 8 nests, 0 chicks for all age classes, and 24 adults. Let's talk about seabird chicks. As mentioned previously, seabird chicks are different from shorebird chicks in that they stay in or near the colony weeks after hatching. If seabird chicks are within sight of an active colony, they should be counted as part of the active colony on the seabird colony form. Seabird chicks of any age class can be documented as part of the seabird colony form. If you observe flight-capable young and you don't see the colony from where you are, count them on a roving chick staging young form. This is the same form as the one we already went over for shorebird roving chicks. You can only report flight-capable seabird chicks on this form. You cannot report downy or feathered seabird chicks. Chicks this young should still be within the colony. Here is an example of a seabird colony with fledglings still within sight of the colony. This colony was observed late in the season and has adults and flight-capable chicks, so the colony status is still active and counts are marked in their relevant columns. As soon as all flight-capable chicks have left the colony, this colony will be marked as no longer active with a final outcome of one or more flight-capable young were produced. If a group of flight-capable young and adults are observed away from the colony, then use the roving chick staging young form. This is the same form we used when documenting roving chicks. Let's look at an example of documenting least-turn young. A flock of flight-capable least-turn young are not within sight of any least-turn colonies. I take a GPS location and record if the area is posted. I report the species and the total number of flight-capable young and adults present with these young. As I was recording these counts, an off-leash dog runs towards them, causing them to flush. I record this in the optional information section. If you see banded birds on your surveys, please document and report these observations. Remember to record the species of the bird, the color and position of any bands and flags, if there are any codes on any of the bands or flags, an approximate GPS location, date and time of observation, and if possible, get a photo. Visit the FSA's Banded Birds page to learn where you can report banded birds. Who you report bands to varies by species and by band combination. The Banded Bird page can be found by going on the FSA's website and clicking on the Banded Birds link under the Resources tab. You can also find guidance on how to collect and record band information. We do not currently have dedicated fields in the FSD to report banded birds, but you can include this information in the comments. The final step of monitoring shorebirds, step 3, is entering your data online into the Florida Shorebird database at flshorebirddatabase.org. We only have a limited amount of time to walk you through the basic steps, but you can contact us anytime during the breeding season with any questions, and we are more than happy to help guide you through data entry. The first step in entering data is to create your own Florida Shorebird database account, if you don't already have one. Then log in. Anytime you're using the FSD, it is best to use Google Chrome as your browser. If you can't remember your login information, don't have Google Chrome, or have other issues with the database, you can email questions to flshorebirddatabase@myfwc.com. After you log in, you will be asked who you are entering data for. Click on the Set for Myself button. You will only use the Select Other User button if you are entering data on behalf of someone else. A guide for entering data for others can be found by clicking in the Quick Guide link. After setting data entry for yourself, you will be brought to this page. This is your My Data page, where you will be able to see all the routes, breeding sites, and rooftops that you monitor. If you are new to the FSD, these boxes will be empty. All the data forms we went over today are entered into the database when you enter a route survey. In order to enter route surveys, you will first need to add routes to your profile. Remember, lots of routes already exist in the database, and multiple people could be surveying the same route. If you want to add a route to your profile, first check to see whether it already exists in the database. To do this, click the blue Add Routes button. Search for a route either by FWC region or county. The routes will appear in a list and on the map. Select the route or routes you want to add to your profile by clicking the checkbox next to the route name. Then click Add to My Routes. The selected route or routes will now appear on your profile on the My Breeding Data page. If you are absolutely certain the route you survey doesn't already exist, you can create a new route in the database. To do this, click on the Create New Route button at the bottom of the page. This will bring you to the Establish a New Route page. You can create a new route by drawing the route on the map using the Capture Click method or by entering a series of coordinates. Be sure to zoom into the map and make sure your new route adequately represents the area that you are surveying. If you only enter the start and end points of your route, you may end up with a route that looks like this. The start and end points are on the beach, but most of the middle section of the route is in the ocean because the beach curves inland a little. This route does not adequately reflect that area you are surveying. Instead, add a few more points in between so the route matches the area that you are surveying. Once your route is drawn, give it a unique name and provide descriptive details: how to best access the route, where to park, where to start and end your survey, etc. Then click Submit and your new route will display in your My Routes box. Now you're ready to enter your route survey data. Click on the Add Survey button next to the route you want to enter a survey for. This will bring you to the Report Route Survey page, which is equivalent to the route form we talked about. Enter the data you collected with the route form here. You will notice that the route name and observer are automatically filled out for you. To add other observers who have FSD accounts, click on the button with these three dots next to Observer 2. In the pop-up box, enter the first or last name of the second observer. Hit Search. Then hit Select next to the desired person's name. Use the additional observers boxes to enter information about people who participated in the survey but do not have an FSD account, or there were more than 3 people who participated in data collection. In this example, Elizabeth Darcy helped Megan and me survey this route, but she does not have an FSD account, so I record her name in the Names box and report 1 in the Number of Additional Observers box. Fill out the date, start and end times using local time, survey coverage, what mode of transportation was used for the survey, and any comments that were recorded during the survey. Once you've completed Step 1, the route form, you can click on Continue to Step 2. Step 2 is where you enter information in the Shorebird nest form, the Seabird colony form, and the Roving chicks staging young forms. Use the Add Sites to Routes button to enter any new sites. Then click on Enter Visit button next to each site to enter site visit information. Click on the Enter Roving Chick / Staging Young button to enter any chick or young observations. After entering all of your site visits, roving chick observations, and staging young observations, remember to enter any additional breeding adults that you observed on the route. Click on the field and enter a numeric count. If you looked but you did not see any additional breeding adults, please report 0. Remember, 0 is confirmed absence. If you are unable to look for any additional breeding adults, click on the drop-down menu and select Did Not Count. Remember, did not count means that you could not confirm if birds were present or absent on the route during the survey. Zero and did not count are not interchangeable. They mean two different things. After all of your data has been entered, be sure to review your route survey to make sure all your information has been entered correctly and is free of typos. If you need to edit any of the site visit information you entered, you can click on the Edit button next to the site visit that needs editing. When you are finished entering and reviewing your data, scroll down to the bottom of the page and click on the Submit Route Survey button. If something comes up and you cannot finish entering your route survey, you can click on the Save and Finish Later button. The next time you log in, the FSD will prompt you to finish data entry. If you want to view your route surveys, see the surveys that other partners have entered for a route, or need to update any information on route surveys that you've already entered, click on the View Edit in the My Routes box. To sum up, there are four main steps to entering data in the FSD. Sign into your account, check for existing routes, or if a route doesn't exist, create a new one, enter a route survey, view or edit your route surveys as needed. The Breeding Bird protocol, the data forums, quick guides, webinar recordings, and other helpful training videos are all available on the FSD website under the Resources tab. Keep in mind that the 2025 webinar recordings will not be available immediately, but you can find the 2024 webinar recordings until then. Also, check out the Florida Shorebird Alliance website for additional resources about bird identification, chick age guides, the monthly Rackline newsletter, and much more. And remember that you can contact us anytime with questions about the protocol or data entry at flshorebirddatabase@myfwc.com. Thank you all for attending this webinar and for continuing to make the Florida Shorebird Monitoring Program a success.